Last time it was just, okay, there we go.
There we
It's
go.
just a
Yeah,
little
that
Teams
looks good.
bug. It comes in
Yeah.
time. All right, well, here we go. Yeah, hello, everyone. I'm Caroline Cluley from Imperial College London, and I'm very pleased to be here today, so thank you very much for having me. Yeah, I want to talk about something that I think really has been very dominant. I mean, how do we assess meaningfully in a world transformed by generative AI? And the stress being on the word meaningfully at this point. So over the past, 2 years or so, generative AI has just developed at astonishing speeds. And although maybe a few months ago, 6 months ago, we may have thought what's starting to slow down a bit in its pace of development, it's really rather showing the opposite at the moment. The development is just accelerating. And when in a year or two ago, we're thinking it's helpful for writing school level essays, but it won't really get near undergraduate level. And it doesn't reference right. Now we can just see that the latest tools can perform in-depth analyses, write really thoughtful reports, truly referencing current literature. And not only that, it can also solve really creative mathematical problems. It can create code of a very high standard. So the whole landscape has changed, extraordinarily. So, of course, we need to react. So we've seen this intense push to AI-proof our assessments, and that's, of course, why we're here. But my question really is, AI is evolving so quickly that every few months there's a big leap forward, and we're always trying to react. Now, given the time it takes through our QA processes in universities, we are bound to always be lagging behind if we're just seeing what happens and what can we do about that. So really, the question becomes, is trying to stay ahead or even keeping up with AI in that sense the right focus at all? And should we be thinking differently? I think with the discussions we're having that are focusing on assessments, and very understandably so, we might be losing some sight of the foundational principle of constructive alignment. So we should never really just be considering assessments in isolation. Really, we need to think first and foremost about what do we want our students to learn? What are the intended learning outcomes? And based on those, we design learning and teaching activities and assessments that align with those. So we can't really just tinker with the assessments. If you look at this triangle here, if you start tinkering with the assessments at the bottom, the entire learning outcomes will just fall down. So we have to look at it more holistically and approach it as one big course design question. Now, of course, the real underlying question on that is what do our students need? And we do talk about that. Even when we're talking about assessments, I think often subconsciously, we're already thinking about learning outcomes. We just need to bring it to the fore. Now, as I said before, AI is running away from us almost. And AI developers are racing towards artificial general intelligence, and they think it's only a matter of a year or two away. Whether that's true or not remains to be seen, but we heard about this last week as well, I believe. So if that's the case, what is it our students need? It becomes almost an impossible question to answer. But the fact that it's so unpredictable means that is the clue. What do they need? They will need that skill to always be able to adapt, to look at what's around right now, engage with that critically, and learn as they go, evaluating as they go along. That's the only thing that we know everyone will need to be able to do. So thinking that's so from a very large scale view. So let's dive into a bit more a concrete example. So this is a very practical example, but I just want to showcase what I'm trying to talk about. So this module I'm teaching, which is called Virtual Reality from Concept to Creation, is a 10-week module where I take students from any STEM background, so engineering, natural sciences, medicine, and even business coming in from next year, business students. And they work in teams to design a virtual reality experience, to design it and create it. It's project-based. Students work together in small teams. And because they all have different backgrounds, they specialize in different aspects. So one might be working on the graphic side, one might do coding, another might really focus on the user journey. And it's very challenging because the students all come from different places. They don't have the same starting point. But that's also the strength because their skills complement each other. So the focus of this module is to create an authentic learning experience. We're trying to mimic what students might be doing in the real world. Now, in the real world, VR developers don't just sit, design, and code on their computers like they did 2 years ago. It is all now aided by AI. So VR developers will be using AI to help them with their code. So we decided to encourage our students to do the same, not forcing them, but just encouraging them. And why that's a really helpful thing for us is because AI's technical prowess in coding, for example, can help students achieve a more impactful project in the end without getting bogged down in the basic technical skills. So what we've done is we've decided to support students by creating a custom GPT. It's a chatbot. This basically via ChatGPT, custom GPT. It was fed all the module materials as its knowledge base and then pre-prompted with instructions of how to behave. So it helps students throughout the project with planning, coding, understanding the assessment, what they need to do for that. But crucially, it isn't a shortcut. It's meant as a scaffold to help students engage more deeply, and especially those who don't have the strong technical coding skills or graphic skills that would normally be needed to create something in VR. And why it's a scaffold is because it helps students to stay within the scope and the focus of the module. Because if they just use any generative AI tool, so for example, just a generic ChatGPT one, and they ask a specific question about creating a project in VR, it will come up with a process that spans 2 years. And they have 10 weeks to do it. So it will overwhelm them and overload them with steps to take and information of what to do. Because we've pre-prompted it and given it everything to do with the module, it can really focus on what students do within the scope of the module, and it gives answers accordingly. Because of that, it's also easier to get a useful answer out of the chatbot for the students. And it means that they don't need to spend ages prompting it. And therefore, because students may not all have the same expertise in prompting, it is a more equitable experience, because even students who haven't engaged with AI very much before can now do so and still get an effective answer. Of course, it still needs critical engagement. Prompting is still important, but the focus becomes more like, what is the right question to ask to achieve the next step in my project? And is this answer going to work for me? And it's less about exactly what do I need to write, what information do I need to give, how do I phrase it differently? Now, why did this work for us? So our students did use AI for most, so they not most of the time, but most students used it very regularly. And the main message there is that it's all in the alignment. So our learning outcomes in the module are not on coding skills, or they are not on creating 3D graphics with, say, Blender, which is the to-go for software package. Instead, it's all about collaboration, working together with people from different backgrounds, creative problem solving, and following a real-world development process. Those are the learning outcomes. And they are not easily replaced by AI, but in fact supported by AI by lowering the hurdle of having to have all the technical know-how. So it's freeing them up to think about the overall process instead. And then students are assessed not exactly on how good their final project is, but how they work together to create it, how they individually engaged with that process, and how well they delivered on the original scope and design they set themselves up with. So it's really about the thinking and the process and not so much the output. If we had more, how shall I say it, more traditional learning outcomes, it would have been things like use Unity to create a VR environment, code in C#, be able to use Blender, and be much more focused on those technical skills. So that's the learning outcomes that have made all the difference. So keeping it brief, because I could go into this so much more depth. But listen, just stepping back again. Really, what I'm trying to say here is, let's not try to beat AI at its own game. Let's not try and shield from it all the time. let's redefine the game altogether. So revisit what we are getting our students to learn. Look at those learning outcomes foremost and make sure they're future oriented. So they don't need updating every year as AI changes again. Think about what skills your students truly need. So it's the higher order skills, still the evaluation skills and critical engagement, but also deep comprehension and having that overall design or process view. Also, we are often a bit afraid of our students knowing better what to do with AI than us. And this is a whole other talk, but I would suggest this is an excellent case for staff-student partnership. Explore with your students how AI fits into the learning process. Because every time you run this module, it will be different. And show them that learning together with AI can therefore be reflective, it can be intentional, it can be empowering. So find out what works well and what doesn't yet, and role model in that way that lifelong learning is really important, and it is the mindset that will get you somewhere. So if we can give our graduates the skills to adapt, that's when we will have given them a future. And I think it's really nicely encapsulated in this particular quote. In times of change, learners inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. And I'm open to questions.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. That was brilliant. I really enjoyed that. That was great. I love the kind of all of the bit about adaptation as well. I think that's why kind of the human race has thrived, isn't it? It's our ability to adapt in kind of in so many situations, really. But it's just incredible the way the human body works, and our ability to cope with different things. So there's lots of questions, but we are slightly running to time. So we've probably got time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. So I'll ask the first one if that's okay. So you use kind of ChatGPT for the chatbots, is that correct?
Yes, I did, and that's because I could provide them with a team subscription for that. But I can see the question is, can they choose any AI? And the answer is yes, they can use whatever they want. I've asked them at the end to show what they use, and they actually all ended up using the custom one.
So you share it, and then you create it, and then you share it with your students on a given module. That's really great, thank you. And we've had quite a few questions about the chatbots, but maybe one that's got the most likes is, how straightforward is it to create a custom chatbot?
That's a really good question. The answer is, it's actually very straightforward. You don't need any technical know-how whatsoever. You just need a really clear idea of what it is. If you're using ChatGPT, that is, what it is you want the chatbot to do exactly, what role does it play, what are its restrictions, don't do this, do that, and feeding it the relevant information that you know is okay to share as well. Obviously, you don't want to give any sensitive or private data away, so you have to think carefully. The more straightforward the role is, I mean, if it's straightforward, you can make it and test it in, say, an hour. If it's more complicated, we took longer because I wanted it to do a lot of different things. So I had to find all the right materials and curate them. I think that was the longest bit for me. But it doesn't need any technical know-how.
And do you use the kind of the local managed ones from ChatGPT, or do you create yours and you manage it in-house? How does that work?
Yeah, it's just this, for this particular purpose, we didn't have a university-backed platform that we could all use. So I instead set up a Teams subscription to ChatGPT, just to open one, and then kept the chatbot just via links, so you can share the link and anyone with the link can use it. But I again told the students and myself to make sure you don't share anything that you wouldn't want to share with everyone out there. I think that's quite important. We were lucky because we could afford, from the teaching income from the module, I could afford the subscription. This isn't scalable to whole university. You would really want to have a tool that everyone can use the same.
But at least you could for your case, and it's a great way to kind of to use it, and obviously it's gone down really well. So thank you. There are quite a few more questions in the Q&A, so if you did have time, if you could have a look through some of those, that would be brilliant. But thanks, Caroline. Another great talk. Thank you.